Ladies and gentlemen, Eileen Rodriguez, Small Business Development Center. Sandra Campbell, U.S. Commercial Service. Elena Mendez, XM Bank. Nancy Cruz, Custom Manufacturing and Engineering. Jay Conroy, Hydrodyne Engineering. And our moderator today, Max Stewart, Enterprise, Florida.
Good morning, everybody. This is what you came here to see, is to actually hear from the companies about their experience on some of these trips. Again, my name is Max Stewart. I'm with Enterprise Florida. To my immediate left is Eileen Rodriguez. She is the Regional Director for the Small Business Development Center. Sandra Campbell with the U.S. Export Assistance Center for the U.S. Department of Commerce. Elena Mendez with XM Bank. Nancy Cruz with Custom Manufacturing and Engineering, and Jay Conroy with Hydrodyne. So this is where we're going to have a lot of audience participation this morning. I really want to get a feel for what questions you have for the panel and also for the companies. Some of these companies were on the trip with us to Chile. We had a great time. The mayor mentioned it this morning. We drank a lot of wine in Chile and had a great time doing business with everybody there. So we're going to get right into it. I have a couple prepared questions for the group, and then I want to open it up to you guys to hear what questions you have for us and also for the companies. So the first question that I have is, this is about the trade mission to Chile. So this is going to go first to Nancy and Jay. Based on the trade mission, what did you learn that you wish you knew before the trip? So Nancy, Jay.
Ladies first, go ahead.
Thank you. For me, when we decided to go to Chile, we wanted to meet with companies because the most important thing for us was we make a variety of products and which products were in demand. And we thought the best way to do that was to meet with companies. And if I look back and say, what did I learn that I would like to change? It would probably be that I would, in these countries, you have to have representation in the country. And so I wish I had done maybe half companies and half representatives in there. So I know I have to go back to Chile because I do need to hire people in Chile to help represent the company. And so that was probably my lessons learned out of it.
Yeah, it's about right.
And I would definitely agree with Nancy. We've done a little bit more international work, but what we have found even before we went down to Chile is we have the technical experience and the capabilities to manufacture our products up here and design it for the customers. But without that local representation, it's very difficult to close those orders. So the primary focus of our trip was really trying to meet with those representatives. We met with a couple customers, but we wanted to try to get someone on the ground that could help distribute and sell our products in Chile.
It's about the relationship.
Absolutely.
We talked about that. If you were at last year's panel, when we did the panel with the exporters, it was all about the relationship, and I think that's the biggest key. So Sandra, do you want to talk about the U.S. Commercial Service and the relationships you can help with the Gold Key and the partner search?
U.S. Commercial Service is a federal agency. We are part of the International Trade Administration of the Department of Commerce. So we have a field office here in Tampa Bay. Myself and Dan Bjork cover all Tampa Bay and Southwest Florida. And we work with companies here locally that are interested in exporting, whether it's products, devices, equipment, services. As you heard before, we work with companies from franchising, tourism, education, but also manufactured goods as well. And we have a variety of services that we do as far as counseling, any type of market research, but also matchmaking. So matching U.S. suppliers with foreign buyers and distribution partners. So on the mission to Chile, we worked with through our office in Santiago at the embassy in Chile, and did the matchmaking through our Gold Key service as one of our more popular services of matching companies with prospective buyers and partners in country. So we actually arrange calls with our staff. We have local staff. We have American commercial officers that manage our staff, but then we have our local commercial staff as well. And I actually want to point out, we have actually my colleague Anya from Toronto is actually down here as well. And then Dan Bjork is also in the back. So yeah, we have this great resources of boots on the ground in most of the major markets, and just there to assist and also troubleshooting if there's questions that come up with logistics or financing. That we pull our partners in here that we work with locally as well.
Yeah, so it's a way to, for a company, it's a way to go to a market without having to do a lot of work yourself. And you get all the meetings arranged for you and the schedules and the translators and everything like that. And it's a great resource. So, and I get to make my plug for what we do on this. The state of Florida, through the legislature, has a grant program. So the state of Florida will actually pay for the cost of the matchmaking service for you in that foreign market. Now, you don't need to go on a trade mission alone, but you could actually, what we'll do is you say, hey, we're thinking about going to Mexico. Jay's thinking about that. So we're going to go to Mexico. We'd like to do a gold key in the market. Let Sandra know, and she'll let me know, and we can actually help. If you qualify, we can actually pay for the cost of that matchmaking service from the state of Florida. So that's a great resource for a company. So the next question I have, and I wrote all my notes on my iPad, so I'd make sure I had it this morning, choosing a target country. For this trip, the state and through the exporters to the Export Alliance, they actually chose Chile as a market. But for Nancy and Jay, choosing those target markets where you want to go, how do you guys choose those as a company, or how have you been thinking about choosing those?
Ben first this time. Well, Chile was interesting for us because we supply products for infrastructure, specifically water and wastewater treatment. And it's a unique market for us because they have a fairly well-developed water and wastewater treatment infrastructure already in many of the cities. So there's the municipal side, but there's also the big carrot dangling out there with mining. There's a lot of mining going on in Chile, and there's a lot of water used in mining operations. So some of the bigger projects that we're eyeing down there will actually be on the industrial side. And some of these projects are upwards of several $1 million. And by going down there and meeting with the people, we've now got the connections to hopefully close those jobs out.
For us, certainly looking to see, who could potentially use your product is something all business people do very early in the process. But being able to work with the U.S. Commercial Services Division, we were able to talk with people in country and say, is there a need for our product in these countries? And the answer came back yes from Chile. And they will tell you no, which to a business person is extremely important because it means you're not going to take your resources and go spend them in an area where you may have a long shot of getting reward back. And we've had the commercial services tell us that. We've worked with other countries and they've come back and said, nah, we don't think this is a good place for you to go. And I'm always appreciative of that because now I can take my limited resources and put them in areas that are important.
Market intelligence.
Right.
Eileen, let's talk about that, targeting markets and how we can help a small business target those markets through.
Absolutely. One of the things that the SBDC does is assist small businesses figure out where they want to expand their business into. And a lot of times, historically it's been, we've had some companies come in and say, gee, we want to export, and what about XYZ company, without any real background, any real data supporting that particular decision. Thanks to our partnership with Enterprise Florida and the U.S. Commercial Service, we prepare export marketing plans for small businesses and help them determine what their best markets are so that, just like Nancy said, when they decide they want to go somewhere, it's going to be worth their while. They're not going to be wasting their time or their money. It's going to be a market that's really, truly perfect for their products and services.
And it's a great program because it actually, in the end, it gives you a step-by-step what you need to do as a company. So it'd say, this is how you need to build your team. This is what you need to do next. This is what you need to do next. Now you need to go on a trade mission. So it's a great tool, and we're very happy we can partner together to help these companies with that. And David brought up something earlier about currency and pricing. And that's something I know that's on Nancy and Jay's mind all the time. So let's talk a little bit about you as a company. What do you do when you're pricing your products overseas? You can talk about financing or anything like that, but how do you guys price your products overseas, and how does that factor into how you sell in those markets?
Well, certainly, in any marketplace, you have to find customers who are willing to pay the price that you can sell your product at. But what we have done to educate ourselves better on pricing our product internationally is we've taken some of the courses that are available through some of the agencies like U.S. Commercial Services Division to talk about all of the things that you need to consider when you price a product internationally. There are different tariffs that we're not used to in the United States. When we sell to the state of Washington, for example, we don't have those types of tariffs that you will have when you go into the international marketplace. And then talking with people in the country, they can give you a lot of insight as to how best to price your product going forward.
So do you use any financing when you finance any of your stuff, or have you used any of that? Or if you were to do a sale, what does your sale look like? Like 50% down, 50% on a delivery? How do you do your sales?
Well, we haven't made that sale internationally except in Europe, which was a little bit different than when we went to Chile. And so what we did there is we actually financed it ourselves going forward.
Cool.
But yeah, we are very interested and know about the Ex-Im Bank, and with a large enough order, we certainly would be talking with Ex-Im Bank. We've also met and talked with some other banks in the area to find out what they can do internationally.
Jay?
Most of the financing that we have done has typically been in-house or through a letter of credit. Oftentimes, the life cycle of our project is upwards of 2 or 3 years sometimes. And once we get the purchase order, we'll typically submit drawings saying this is exactly what we're building for the customer to make sure everyone's on the same page. Once those drawings are approved, we'll typically get a deposit down of anywhere between 10 and 25%, which helps cover our engineering costs. And then before we ship it out, we will require probably a 50% payment before it actually goes on a boat to leave the port and out of the country. But then there's trailing costs after that once it shows up on site, we're typically going out to do startup services. So the final payment may take a little while, and that's why the letter of credit's a nice insurance policy to make sure we finally get paid.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Elena, let's talk about Ex-Im Bank and some of the financing opportunities for companies from you.
From a financing perspective, we generally defer the financing to our lender partners through our guarantee programs. In particular, there is a working capital guarantee program for U.S. exporters for pre-export financing and preparation of the product ready to go to export. This is a program that is very widely used, more specifically for those manufacturers who are either in the process or currently exporting overseas. We do have some of our lender partners in the audience. We do have a variety of them throughout the state of Florida as well as nationally. So I welcome you to go to my table and get some more information on that program. However, there are other options in the event that the lenders are not able to provide the financing. We do have a direct loan program, which is called the Global Credit Guarantee, Global Credit Express program, and that is a direct loan given to small exporters who could otherwise not get financing through the traditional means. So those two programs are very popular at this moment.
Yeah, and it's great if you're a small business that's financing something and you want to guarantee terms. I know in Chile, a lot of the companies we were all talking to, they need terms. They need net 30, net 60 to even work with a sale. So it's great to have the financing opportunities available for these companies to start the process and say, yeah, I can, before they go on a trip, no, yep, I can guarantee terms for a company. So I wanted to make a few quick things because I know we have this is international town hall. The state of Florida, as most of you know, has offices in 15 foreign countries around the world. We're one of the states with the largest amount of offices overseas. And today we actually have 3 of our international offices here with us and in the room. And our office from EFI Japan is here. Sam and Fujimoto-san are here this morning. And then from our office in the UK, Gavin is here somewhere, and I can't see him. He's right here. And Anna, with our office in Mexico City, Anna is right there in the back. There she is. So not only do you have all these partners on stage, but you actually have people that are in the markets that can kind of give you some idea of what goes on in the markets. And Sam and I were talking this morning about Japan, and there's a lot of interest from Japan, from Japanese businesses doing business with Florida companies. So if you'd like to see about partnering with a Japanese company, talk to Sam and Fujimoto, and they can kind of guide you through that process. But what we're going to do this morning is I really want to open it up and hear from the businesses in the room and the service providers and everybody in the room questions for the panel that you have on your mind, and questions for our companies about some of their trips and some of the things that they've done. So small businesses, raise your hand if you're in the room and you're a small business owner in the room. We have a few small businesses here. This is the time for you to ask some questions for the group, and this is kind of like, are you smarter than a fifth grader? We're going to make this, are you smarter than the panel? So at this time, if you have any questions, we have microphones that go around the room. Just raise your hand and let us know, and I'd like you to direct some questions to them, because this is where we really want to get the town hall with the questions and answers for the panel. So does anybody have a question for us? Or anybody? I can't see up here, so raise your hand, stand up, please, if you can. Okay, do I see anybody with a hand raised? I can't see with the light. Back here, okay, go ahead.
Hi there, I own about a 40-member manufacturing company, and I guess my first question is, what's the most effective way to find representatives in countries? Because presumably, an in-country rep is probably the best way for most of us to sell.
So you like a distributor or a representative or an agent?
A distributor, agent, sales rep, manufacturer's rep, whichever,
Okay.
one version of that.
So Nancy and Jay, you guys want to go for that first?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I mean, in the past, how we've always done it is you spend hours and hours on the internet, you make phone calls, you reach out to your network to try to find a couple leads, and if you can get 2 or 3 people lined up, go ahead and plan a trip. Several years ago, that's how we started working in Australia, and it was not efficient compared to this process, which really, from my standpoint, was a breeze. We did a little bit of homework before going down there, making sure we knew what we were getting into, but very little outside of just reading through the list of probably 20 different candidates that we were looking at as representatives, weeding that down to, I think we had meetings with 11 people total, 9 of which were representatives in the markets that we were looking for, water and wastewater equipment distribution. And did a little bit more homework on those people, and then when we showed up as part of this group, it was so much easier than going down on your own, where you're just a single business owner trying to impress someone with your products or your company. As part of this trade mission, I think it kind of carried an air of importance and made you feel maybe a little bit more special individually, because they hear that you're traveling with the mayors of St. Pete and Tampa and commissioners and a lot of other elected officials, and it was 40 or 50 people, I think, as part of the group. And by the end of it, you're kind of starting to feel a little bit like a celebrity, because these folks have heard about you, and you walk into that last meeting of the day and you're like, where are the rose petals and caviar? Don't you know who I am? But it carried a nice air about it, and paved the way to allow us to meet with the decision makers, the owners of those companies, and some of their lead salespeople that would actually be promoting our products, as opposed to maybe the person that just fields the internet inquiries or the receptionist answering the phone.
Right. I would agree with Jay on that. When we went to Chile, like I said, we didn't ask to meet with representatives, and as I said before, that would be something that I would change. But while we were there, an interesting thing happened. The U.S. Commercial Services person we were traveling with said, I have somebody you absolutely need to meet. And so he called up this person, and this person came over lunch, and we actually met with a representative in Chile. And I think that's an important thing to do. I've met potential representatives at trade shows that I've gone to, international trade shows. That's another place to meet potential reps. But I think, having someone who's been vetted through the process is important. I do defense contracting work, so I have to be very careful of who I interact with internationally, probably more so than everybody has to be careful, but even more so with defense products. And so, having someone who's been vetted through that process is an important piece for us.
Sandra, do you want to talk a little bit?
Well, besides even just anything from a list of contacts all the way through, actually meetings in country, what Nancy had mentioned too about trade shows, we actually are active in a lot of even domestic trade shows, some of the major shows. We actually bring in foreign buyer delegations to the shows. So I know next month in June, for instance, I'm doing Infocom in Orlando, and then also a clinical lab show in Atlanta in July. And so my colleagues all throughout the country, we have about 100 offices throughout the U.S. that we do these, support these shows as well, because we can actually do on-site matchmaking with the delegations, but also have our specialists, which are so knowledgeable about the market, that could be there to actually give you briefing and counseling. And then we also do international trade shows as well. We can kind of guide you as far as which ones are the best, maybe to kind of maximize your trip. If you're going to be doing trip and meeting with some companies, and then you can also go to a local show as well.
Yeah, because it matters in a market. All markets are different, so a rep might work well in one market, where a joint venture might have to work in another market, or a dealer distributor might work well. So that's what kind of the resources can do for you as a company, is tell you your best bet is going to be a distributor or a joint venture in the market. So those are some of the resources that they can provide for you in that aspect. Next, anybody else have any other questions? A light right here in my face, I can't see. Does anybody in the back have a question? Nope. Okay, I'm going to answer. I actually have another question that I really wanted to ask. And this is a question we asked last year, but it needs to be repeated every year. Cultural communication. Culture, the differences between culture. What are some of the things you learned in some of the foreign markets you've gone to? And this is for everybody on the panel, actually, but we'll start off with Nancy and Jay. But culture, what are some of the important things that you learned from Chile, but from some of the other markets that you didn't know before, that you should know when you're going to some of these foreign markets?
Well, I think we talked and did a little bit of research before we went into Chile to understand a little bit better the culture that was going on. Not everyone does business like they do in the United States, and in fact, in many of these marketplaces, you need to develop the relationship to a much longer extent before they are willing to do business with you. And I think you need to be prepared for that. In America, if you have a need, we go in, we do a business deal, and out we go. And then we develop the relationship because it's a nice long-term relationship. But in many of these countries, they want to have a relationship with you before they do business with you.
Yeah, I think the relationship's always important. I don't think you can ever go wrong, but certainly some countries are more direct, and they're like, let's just get to the brass tacks and cut a deal. Other ones, a few years ago, we went down to Argentina, and it's very much we don't talk business on your first meeting. We go out and we eat lunch. We stay out until 11 o'clock eating dinner at night. And building those sort of relationships are key to ever closing a job internationally, because you're so reliant on those people there to actually get the deal inked for you. If you don't have a relationship with them or trust in them, I don't think it's ever going to get off the ground, and you really expose yourself to some risks because you're reliant on someone else being the face of your company.
Well, and Nancy actually pointed out that it's really important for businesses to really do their homework before they go to a foreign country. And even, for example, I speak Spanish, I'm Latina, but that does not necessarily translate, and I'm not talking language, I'm talking about culture, to every single country. What I do in my country might be completely different than, let's say, it's Chile or Argentina or wherever. So everybody needs to do a little bit of homework to make sure that you don't offend that potential client. You want to sell. That's why you're going into these countries. You're just trying to sell your products and your services. So the last thing you want to do is start off on the wrong foot. And doing just a little bit of homework before you get on the plane really does go a very, very long way.
Or on the plane.
Or on the plane is fine too.
Yeah.
And probably just be flexible to different cultures. Understand that they're going to be a little bit different. And don't be insulted if you're in Mexico and someone shows up an hour late for a meeting. And a few years ago, I was in Germany, and I went to go get another cup of orange juice and missed my bus by about 4 seconds. And that's just part of the deal in doing business in other countries.
And I'd like to point out there are resources to help you. I mean, I have already gone back to some of the commercial services people in Chile and asked them cultural questions. I'm seeing this, how does that relate? And they give you that type of feedback because that relationship is so critical to being successful.
Absolutely.
Well, I was mentioned too is, usually, especially if you're traveling there, when you usually have a briefing before your meetings start. And so they kind of talk about the business, the meetings that are going to happen, but also some protocol tips that you might not be aware of But also, yeah, just doing homework. There's great things like I know there's Culturegrams. We have our country commercial guide. A lot of stuff you can find online. But yeah, just make sure that you're aware of those types of things. And especially if you cross your legs and you have your shoe out, just even like little things like that can make it pretty insulting, to certain cultures. So you just want to make sure that you just don't make those kind of obvious faux pas.
One
Exactly.
of the things that we do for our clients is help them prepare for those overseas missions and those overseas trips. So we can actually pull together a very brief report on cross-cultural issues that they need to be aware of before they actually go overseas. And so that really does help them, taking information from the CIA World Factbook and just a bunch of different other resources.
Good. And also, talking about selling to those countries, when we talk about relationships, culture, it takes a lot longer to do business. Some people have said from the first time you meet somebody, it could take 18 months to do a sale internationally. So, for things like EXIM Bank, you have the working capital where you can extend those terms and say, yes, let's talk for the next year. And stuff like that. So you have a length of time to get those deals done and discuss those things. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Has anybody brought up anything else? Yes, question right here in the front. Absolutely. I'll repeat it for the rest of the group. We're talking about students using interns from the colleges, from UT, from University of South Florida, St. Petersburg, from University of South Florida in Tampa. Using those students and their knowledge of their own countries is a key thing to internships. And I know we're talking in Pasco County and Pinellas County, and Commissioner Starkey's here from Pasco. They're working on the German Skills Initiative, so the apprenticeship programs that are happening right now in Pasco, in Hillsborough, Pinellas County, in those areas. So those are the key important parts to using students in the process. Any other questions from the audience that anybody wants to ask? Yep, in the back.
I know that a lot of this has focused on export of products, but I do know that this is mostly directed to Sandra. That you guys do support export of services as well, and it almost seems that there's an inverse need for assistance in that, in terms that really what you're trying to export is services to people who are coming into the country. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do to assist companies that are providing services in hopes of bringing in customers from the other countries?
Okay. Yeah, we work with a variety of services. I mean, just one example is in education services. We work with the local universities. We have virtual education fairs and different programs that we do. My colleague Dan works with the franchising, which services as well. But we also work with companies that have architectural, construction, engineering. So I think the key there is working with our offices internationally. They're assigned different industries, our specialists in different countries. So working with them to actually find you. Usually it's identifying a good partner, if a company wants to open an office there, we can kind of provide guidance on that, but if they're just wanting to maybe not have that physical presence in country, but want to identify some good partners that maybe have kind of complementary type services that they can use as far as getting into market there. But as far as drawing in, we work with also for tourism or education, bringing people in here for spending their money. We also work with that as well. I know international for tourism, the Powwow Show and some of the other trade shows that we work with the local CVBs, and I think my colleagues also has working on a fam trip of journalists from Saudi Arabia that's coming through. So that's just kind of some examples that we do when we work with services.
Yep, in the back.
You mentioned that there were 15 international offices that Florida has. What are some of the other cities where they're located, and what kind of resources do they have?
Sure. So from the state's level, we have a mixture of offices. Some of the offices do foreign direct investment, which is called FDI. So they're responsible for looking for companies that are looking to come to the States and open operations in the States. So we have offices in Toronto and Montreal, And right now, Montreal office and the Tampa Bay office are frenemies this week because Montreal and Tampa are playing, so I got my blue socks on for the Lightning. So they're really upset right now, and they're really mad that Tampa Bay, is 3 games up on them. So, but we have offices in Sao Paulo, Brazil, South Africa. We have offices in Israel. We also have a new office that just opened this last year in Hong Kong and Shanghai. So we have offices there, and Taiwan, and of course Japan, Mexico City, the UK, France, and Germany. So there are a lot of offices, and on the resource tables you can see all those offices and all what they do. All the offices are there to assist. They assist at different levels, so it just helps, but partnering that with what the U.S. Commercial Service does in those markets is a very valuable resource. So we can definitely show you all the offices that are out on the table. So any other questions? I want to hear from you guys, because you guys are the ones with the good questions usually. So, yes, right here in the back.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. You guys mentioned that Tampa Bay is uniquely positioned to reach the Latin American market. And seeing from going to Chile, how can companies partner with existing organizations here to grow their markets, specifically Hispanic-owned businesses, since it seems like they can be bridge gap builders in regards to culture? And how have you seen maybe Hispanics, especially with the new trade agreements with Colombia, the growing economies of Chile and Peru, being involved in that?
Well, I know that the services the SBDC provides, really, it's for all businesses, obviously because of our market and because of the fact that we are the gateway to the Americas. We do see a lot of Hispanic-owned businesses coming in to seek our help in expanding their businesses as well. It makes a lot of sense, obviously, just because of our real estate location, if you will, and the fact that we do have a lot of Latinos here in the state of Florida. I can tell you that on our staff, in fact, my entire international trade staff is bilingual, one of them is trilingual, so that really does also help when we're talking to these businesses and when they're wanting to expand to those Latin markets.
One of the companies that went on not just one, but one of the companies that went on the trip with us was Ken Woodhouse, and he actually is Chilean and American, so he speaks Spanish fluently. So when I said, would you need an interpreter in the market? He's like, are you kidding me? No, I speak the language fine. I don't have to worry about that. So he was great, but we've had other delegation meetings. Some of the companies just right here in Pinellas County, Carlos Lincona with Atlantic Drilling went to Panama, and he's already getting contracts from his Panama mission that we went on last year, or earlier this year. So those are some of the things. So there's opportunities for that because the culture's very, very similar. So we encourage everybody to come on these missions, come on these trips, sign up. I mean, if you don't qualify for the trip yet, we can help you through the SBDC and the U.S. Commercial Service to get qualified in the future to make sure your products and services are available for those markets. It does take time. Small businesses need to grow, so that's what we're there to help. So any other questions? That's a good question. Yep, over here.
Hi, my name is Raja Terrain. I'm with a company called Pira Whitwa. We are a freight forwarder right here in Largo. And I heard all the conversations about the product, selling the product, introducing your services to overseas. But as all of you guys know, this product has to make it to the other side, and that's by using a freight forwarder or a steamship line or whoever. I'm talking about all my people in the freight forwarding business here. I wanted to ask, all these travels and everything, it's really great, but how could we, as a logistics providers, we can help you? I'm sure Jay will be able to testify that if you are going over there making a deal, your product has to make it to that country. You have to know how to clear customs. You have to do all your due diligence to make sure that your product gets there safely. In logistics, we want to support the exporting, and I want to see if there is anything that we can do to assist you, or maybe you guys could take us over there with you in your travels. That we can help a little bit. So that's really more of a statement than a question.
Yeah. Jay, how big are your pieces of equipment?
I'm sorry?
How big are your pieces of equipment that you send?
Some of them are quite large, 50, 60 feet tall. Sometimes we've shipped stuff 10, 11, 12 feet wide. So we've shipped stuff in C crates, open top crates, flat racks, that sort of thing. So talking about the usefulness of freight forwarders, I mean, it's invaluable, particularly in your first few jobs, because you don't know how to navigate all of those potential pitfalls with insurance and custom forms and those things. So I think it's extremely useful.
Yeah, Nancy, some of your stuff's pretty big too.
No, it's certainly not as big.
Oh, not
as,
the solar thing.
It's much smaller than Jay's.
Yeah. Well, we talk about this all the time, and it's about assembling your team on the international side, and you need a good freight forwarder to assist you with that and say, before you make the sale, hey, how is it going to get to this market? What are we going to have to do? So I know Eileen, Sandra, and I talk about this all the time when we talk to companies. This is what we need to do. You know, you need to make sure that on your team is a good freight forwarder, and we tell everybody about freight forwarders in the area, so we list as many as we can. You need to interview these guys, talk about their markets, where they go. So we'd love to talk to you afterwards and get your information. So all the freight forwarders in the room, let us know who you are, because we don't know everybody, but we need to know who you are to help these companies. So, any other questions from the audience? Can't see in the back. Is there anybody raising their hand? Yes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. So much awesome information here. My name is Vinay Mulinti, and I run a business called Blue Dot Interactive. We do web design and internet marketing. My question to you guys is because you're already in the middle of so much action, can you tell us what do you see are the future opportunities where we could focus on or explore, just some suggestions, because there's so many diverse group of people here, any thoughts, any ideas, any suggestions that can help us?
Are you talking about products or markets? Or
just markets in general, with all the action that's happening in place with everything today.
Emerging markets is always the fun question. So,
yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think one of the things that is really important is that it's going to vary from company to company. Depends on what you're selling. And so, what might be an emerging market for you may not necessarily be an emerging market for somebody else. Obviously, when we pull together our export marketing plans for our clients, we take a lot of things into consideration, not just your products and services, but we take a look at the trade agreements that we have between our country and other countries, and a number of different factors that really go into figuring out whether those markets are really truly going to be good for you. So I personally don't think it's going to be a blanket statement saying, oh geez, everybody should go to these 3 countries. It really is going to depend.
Elena, would you talk a little bit about the markets that the risk in some of these markets and some of the markets you see?
Ex-Im Bank produces a country limitation schedule, which is a listing of all the countries throughout the world. Right now, we're open in over 180 countries worldwide, depending on each program, either short-term, medium-term, or long-term. But definitely, it is an interesting reference tool, and it's an important reference tool to check periodically, because it does change on a constant basis.
What else I'd like to add too is the Commerce Department has a Doing Business in Africa initiative. We opened 6 new offices this past year in Africa, and we're actually doing a large kind of trade mission / conference called Trade Wins Africa in September. So it's just a way to kind of reach some, maybe a market can be intimidating. A lot of companies here might do business in Latin America and Europe, Middle East, but they haven't really looked at Africa. So that's something that our people can look at, evaluate to see if you have potential there, and then they can kind of guide you through the process. And there will be a conference in Johannesburg, but then also kind of spin-offs to various markets throughout Africa. So that's something else that we're doing with Commerce.
Yep.
And to add to that, Ex-Im Bank also has a Sub-Saharan African initiative. We have a team of officers in Washington, D.C. attending to that specific market. So that's also a benefit for it.
Yeah, I'm going to take the question a little bit differently, and that is to suggest to the small business community out here in particular, use Eileen's program. Get a marketing plan done, because they'll take your product, your service, whatever it is, and they'll look across marketplaces and try to tell you what the demand is in each of those marketplaces. So if you're wondering where should I go as a small business, I mean, I would recommend that be one place that you start, because we did that a number of years ago, and it laid out for us, here are some potential places where they buy your types of products, and here are some that don't. And like I said, that's an important piece for a small business in particular.
Yeah, and from the state of Florida's perspective, we just applied for and received a STEP grant from the SBA and the federal government to reach more into Asia, all the Asian markets. And so we have a lot of resources going into some of the shows like MedFair Thailand, Med China. We're also doing Singapore Air Show, a lot of different markets in Asia. So the state of Florida has an increase in that. And to give you a perspective, if you're going to go to a trade show, the state of Florida has a grant now that will cover up to 100% of the cost of a trade show booth, up to $7,500 at an international show. So if you want to go to a show in Asia, anywhere in Asia, and we're including Australia in Asia too, so you go all the way to Asia, all the way to India, and if you're going to go to a show in one of those markets, we'll give you a grant for up to $7,500 for that. But also, if you're going to do a gold key in one of those foreign markets in Asia, the state's going to pay for everything for your matchmaking service, including your car and driver in the foreign market as well. So there's a big push from the state, and you're talking about emerging markets, and we're looking towards Asia. And we were just doing a presentation amongst staff yesterday, and they were saying that, a third of the world's population lives within a 900 or 1,000 kilometer area, including Indonesia, Malaysia, South China, that area right there. So that's really where we have a focus on in the foreign markets. So does anybody have any other questions for us or the panel or anything like that? We have one right here, and I think that might be the final question. So we might be able to get Norma in. We'll see.
Good morning. Thank you very much for all your comments. Now,
oh, it's Rose. Okay.
Yes. You have many countries represented, but I'm going to be biased because I represent Kingdom of Bahrain. And I'd like to know, first of all, if Enterprise Florida would consider opening an office there, because it is the gateway to the entire Gulf region. We have a free trade agreement with the U.S., and it's a great emerging market. And we import everything. So any type of business or manufacturer can do really well with exports. And it would benefit both sides, of course.
You're going to have to bring that up with Manny and Bill, and talk to Manny Mencia about that. So, but yeah, we go to 4 or 5, actually we'll go to 6 trade shows in the Middle East right now, and we've talked about that. So the state of Florida does go to a lot in that area. So real quick before, I know I need to close and I need to go, but I wanted to just recognize some of the people that you might also want to talk to if you're looking at other markets. Some of the members of our international coalition are here. From the base, and they can wave and say hi, but those are some of the great resources in the markets. I'm just so pleased that they were able to join us this morning. So members, thank you for coming over for this event from the base right there. There they are right there. So thank you very much. They're good friends. We've had dinner a couple times. Well, that's it for us. Our resources are going to be outside, so if you want to talk to any of us on stage, and Nancy and Jay will make them stand outside too. But if you want to talk to any of us about anything that we do internationally, we'd love to help you. We'd love to give you our card and talk to you at some future event. But thank you for engaging with us in this panel, and thank you all for letting us be a part of this today. So we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.